Ken Belson, reporter at the New York Times and the author of Every Day is Sunday, How Jerry Jones, Robert Kraft, and Roger Goodell turned the NFL into an economic juggernaut. Thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I want to start on the ownership side of things with Jerry Jones and Robert Kraft. And I want kind of high level understand their influence over the league and what role they played in, in your own words, turning this league into an economic juggernaut.
Sure. Well, Jerry and Robert are very different people. Jerry's this sort of swashbuckling Southerner. Robert's this sort of more maybe quiet or understated guy from Boston. But they have a lot in common. They both came from families where their dads were small businessmen. They both got into business right after college. Jerry Jones famously tried to buy the San Diego Chargers when he was 23 years old. Robert took over his father-in-law's packaging business and grew it into an international conglomerate. So very successful. But when they buy their teams, the Cowboys and the Patriots, they buy them at record prices when both teams are having lots of financial trouble, need new stadium, fans, teams are not playing well, all sorts of things. And so they both set out to rebuild those franchises. But the second thing they did, and this is why they're highlighted in the book, is they both got really involved in the NFL business, figuring if they can help the entire NFL grow revenue, then they're obviously going to benefit as well. So all boats rise together. And so Jerry and Robert were both very influential early on in their tenure in the media side of it. Robert had owned or part-owned a CBS affiliate in Boston, so he knew the CBS people. Jerry was the guy who brought Rupert Murdoch to the table, and Fox Sports wins the contract in 1994. It displaces CBS. Robert's the guy who brings CBS back 4 years later at double the price. So both of them understood media's where the league makes its money, and all boats rise if all revenue rises. And they've been very good, and that's been their blueprint really ever since then.
To bounce around a little bit, you fast forward, obviously, in the 21st century, the NFL kind of had a moment of caution, a breaking point. Obviously, the impact of concussions and brain trauma became a huge issue for the league. And here we are in 2026, and it feels like the league has overcome that to a certain extent, bounced back, and is not as controversial as it's been in the past. I mean, it really was a huge turning point. I'm wondering if you could walk us through how they were able to kind of get past that.
Sure. Well, I mean, if one thing is true to me over the years covering the league, dozen or so years, is the league is filled with lawyers and marketing people, and in both cases, very good ones. The lawyers obviously minimize risk, liability, as in the concussion settlement, and the marketing people try and return the focus to football wherever they can. During those crises, particularly with the player health issues, they did settle a landmark case brought by 5,000 retired players. It's over $1.5 billion in payouts so far. And so it really was remains the biggest of its kind. So you settle the legal part of it, and then you get to work trying to get people to stop worrying about how dangerous football is. Now, some of it they'll never get rid of. The game is violent, let's face it, at least the tackle version of it. But they've also done things to help players and help coaches spot concussions, concussion protocols, keeping players out for a week, safer equipment insofar as that helps, safer fields, a lot of things around the game of football that I think were designed to both help the current players, but also help parents understand, okay, my son can get involved without worrying about brain damage later in his life, something like that. That's the goal. Some of it will never go away. There'll always be some risk of injury with football, but I think that marketing strategy has worked in terms of reassuring parents. And that's why, to your point, I think people are just talking about it less than they were certainly 5 years ago or even 10 years ago.
So if we've shifted this perception, do you feel like the sport has done enough? Are we at a point where, given, like you said, football is very violent and there are dangers associated with, has the sport done enough to kind of, educate, but also kind of mitigate those? Or do we still have a ways to go as far as, I say we, I mean the sport, a ways to go as far as that?
Well, the NFL is always looking at this. I mean, their competition committee, their health and safety committees, they're constantly looking at this. And let's just put it in business terms. The largest expense for any owner is their payroll. And a player getting paid $40 million a year who's sitting on the bench injured is not helping that owner. And you've seen, say, Patrick Mahomes, getting injured this season with his knee, and the Chiefs were done. So it behooves the owners to try and make sure Patrick Mahomes stays on the field, whatever form that takes, whether it's identifying potential injury before it happens, which sometimes is used with data, treatment techniques, banning hitting the quarterback below the knee or any player below the knee. Those kinds of things the league is always looking at. The changes to the kickoff have been most recent. I mean, they annoy certain people, but on the other hand, one of the highest injury rates is when you're running down the field at 20 miles an hour straight into another player trying to stop you at 20 miles an hour. So, it's a very dangerous play, and the league has at least experimented with how to mitigate the risk.
Obviously at Forbes, one of the things we track on the Sports Money Group are the value of teams, and the NFL, I mean, the four major North American sports leagues have all appreciated at a crazy rate, but the NFL, has far exceeded and stands above the rest. I'm wondering, through all your reporting, through all your research, what, are your thoughts kind of on the way the team valuations have risen, and are we hitting a point where you expect them to stop? Do you think the business will continue to keep growing? What are you seeing in that regard?
Well, even since 2018, when the Panthers sold for 2.3 billion, it then jumped to 4.5 billion for the Broncos and 6 billion for the Commanders, and now the Seahawks are going to come up for sale, and I assume they're going to go well past 6. Look, I think the NFL benefits compared to the other leagues. Not that the NBA has done poorly. The Lakers and Celtics both were sold for record amounts, but the NFL has such a hold on the media universe. Their games are so much more broadly watched, and as a consequence are worth so much more. And the other thing is the league has maintained its media strategy to keep it national. They never went down the rabbit hole of regional sports networks, which narrowed the audience. And with only 17 regular season games or weeks, there's scarcity, and you can be a national league without having to flood people with 162 games for each team. So I think their strategy has been deliberate, and it showed. I mean, 75, 80% or 80 out of the top 100 games are NFL games, so or broadcasts are games. So that's valuable. You got amazing reach. The brands are national. It's easy to see how there are more Bills fans outside of Western New York than there are in. It's the same with the Packers, the Steelers. There's a lot of teams that are not just national but international. So I think the market is saying I want to buy up, because it's going to pay off. I think your numbers, the Forbes numbers, I think Jerry Jones's Cowboys are now at $12 billion. He bought it for $115 million in 1989. So it's been a pretty steady return over his lifetime.
Yeah, that's not a bad way for an investment to go. I'm curious, one of the things that's kind of in the ether right now is talk about an 18th regular season game. I'm old enough where most of my life was the 16 regular season games. They moved to 17. Now we're talking about an 18th. In the context of kind of the labor negotiations, I'm wondering what's kind of your assessment of, is the 18th game something that's going to happen? What do past labor negotiations say about that?
Sure. Well, Roger Goodell said on Monday at his own press conference, his State of the League address, that it wasn't a given that there would be an 18th game. But Robert Kraft himself said, not even a few days before that, we're aiming for an 18th game. It makes sense from their perspective on multiple fronts. You get rid of one preseason game that doesn't particularly draw well. You add potentially a second bye week. So if you add the second bye week and an 18th game, the Super Bowl will move to President's Day weekend. So now it will truly be a national holiday, a 3-day weekend embedded in that. So it makes sense from their perspective. As for the union, they need the union to sign off on it. The union's in a lot of turmoil now. They don't have a executive director. They're still searching for one. So you can't really start talks with an interim director. And it's going to take, even if they hired somebody tomorrow, it's going to take them 6-8 months just to get to know their new role. So it's going to be a while. They can, they don't have, their labor deal runs through 2031. So it's not the end of the world if they just wait. But I know the NFL is anxious because they see a lot of potential media money in adding that extra week's games.
A focus of your book obviously is the role Roger Goodell played as well as commissioner. I'm wondering how you assess his influence, how he compares to commissioners of years past. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I mean, the NFL's been pretty fortunate. Pete Rozelle was a fabulous commissioner. He was there for 29 years. He modernized the NFL. You just think of 3 things he did in 29 years. Monday Night Football, first pro sports on prime time, NFL Films, which has created a lot of content, and the Super Bowl. Those three things alone would put him in the Hall of Fame of commissioners. And then you hand it off to Tagliabue, who really took the league out of the labor struggles they had in the 1980s, introduced free agency and the salary cap and revenue sharing, all the way to Roger Goodell. And as Roger again said the other day, Paul made it easy for him to step into the job. And I think where Roger has, he's left his mark is really turning the NFL mostly into a media company, filling in the calendar with more NFL content. You know, the combine has gotten bigger, the draft has gotten bigger. There's a primetime schedule announcement in May when most of us should be watching baseball. They're still putting out content, Hard Knocks. So that's been part of Roger's legacy, is figuring out how to make money from the biggest source, which is media.
How do you think about the challenges that are associated with the media landscape now, whether it's cord cutting, the viewership getting older? What does the NFL have to do to kind of circumvent? I mean, as you point out before, like when Nielsen top 100 broadcasts come out, you know, the NFL dominates. So they're still in control and doing something right, but these challenges affect everyone.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the league, like all the leagues, has challenges with what will happen with the networks financially. The Paramount and CBS, that's one. But NBC, there's a bidding war for Warner Brothers. There's a lot of unanswered questions going on, and then the power of the streaming outlets, Amazon, Netflix, and so forth. I think the league is treading carefully. They have media deals through 2030, 31, and then beyond. But you know, everything's changing so quickly. I don't even think the league knows. They have a sense, but things are happening very dramatically. What I think they're going to stick to, as they keep saying, is reach. Whatever gets them the largest audience without alienating older viewers or younger viewers, that's what they're going to go for. So that's why you have a combination of the old world, if you will, linear networks, Fox, CBS, and so forth, and then mixing in the newer guys, Amazon, and so forth.
Well, you know, when you say that, obviously it's hard not to think about what's going on with ESPN and kind of this trade of sorts where they're taking an equity stake in ESPN, but also sending assets over like NFL Red Zone that traditionally lived through NFL Network. How does that kind of factor in? I mean, this is kind of a little uncharted territory for the NFL to actually own a piece of a media company.
Yeah, conversely, I mean, you know, in 2003, they started NFL Network, and there was an idea that they would eventually just sell it pretty quickly. There were bidders for it back in '08 because they had locked up some of those early Thursday night games. Comcast wanted it. They've held on to it a long time. It's got a lot of pieces. It has the online part of it. It's got the NFL Films part of it. I mean, there's a lot of media around it, not just the cable network. But to the owners, the number of cable subscribers is going down. It was time to get rid of it. Give it to somebody else, let them run it. Also, it's going to save them tens of millions of dollars in production. They're not going to have to run the studio, buy the talent, let ESPN do it. That's their strong suit. So the NFL will save money by not having to operate it. And they'll own a piece of Disney/ESPN. And there'll be extra games that they can now, they'll give some of them to ESPN, and then they'll go out and they'll have 4 or 5 more games they can market to a Netflix or Amazon or something.
Yeah, to your point, I minced my words there because obviously they own NFL Network, but owning an external media company. You know, when you think about other avenues of growth for the NFL, and you know, this will tie into media rights as well because there are leagues around the world who do make a ton of money from international rights packages, but the NFL's international expansion, where are we in that progress, and is the goal ultimately to be able to sell a large media rights package overseas?
So to answer your question, the 18th game is critical to their international strategy. It creates a lot more inventory. It will allow every team in the NFL, all 32 teams, to play overseas every season. And once you do that, well, now you can sell at least 1 and maybe 2 international packages that'll be worth $1 billion or more. And which platforms can deliver that? Primarily YouTube and Netflix. They have global reach already on streaming. So the cost is there. Or the platform is there, and you know, I'm assuming they're going to want to bid for that. So that's where I think the 18th game makes the most, not sense, but that's one of the reasons they're really pushing it. International itself is a really long-term play. You know, I mean, getting a media package will finally have it pay off, but the NFL has invested a lot of money since 2007 in playing regular season games, and they don't move fast. The NFL. They use their leverage, their size to take their time, figure out what works. In the book, there's a great quote from Shad Khan. He actually says, "We are late adopters. We let the other leagues go first. They figure out what works, doesn't work, and then we look at it and decide what we figure works best for us. That was true with private equity, the introduction of private equity money, where the NFL still is more conservative than the other leagues. International, gambling, these issues, the NBA and Major League Baseball typically have been out front, and the league comes in later.
So obviously, when you think about Robert Kraft and Jerry Jones, you mentioned earlier what roles they played in kind of these early versions of the media rights deals. Do you think this kind of international expansion was in their initial vision, or is this something that's kind of evolved as we've gone on?
It has been on the league's radar for many years. I mean, they started playing regular season games in '07, so there certainly was that idea. There had been European leagues, but they were spring leagues. They were kind of a version of the G League, and I think the European fans kind of figured out they weren't watching NFL caliber talent, and so by the end of that effort, which ended in '06, and they shut it down, it was mostly just teams in Germany. So it kind of failed to capture the imagination. And once you bring over the real deal, the fans get it. And they understand the import of it, that the game they're watching is going to count towards the playoffs or the standings. And I've been to 4 games at Wembley, and they're great crowds. I mean, the fans are into it. I don't know if they all understand the rules, but it's generally a carnival atmosphere, and it plays well. They've moved obviously to other countries, Germany, Mexico City, they're returning there, Australia. There are countries where the NFL is understood to play well. And by that I mean, obviously the game is to some degree popular, but the American production value of the cheerleaders and the flames going up when the players come out. I think a lot of Europeans who go to a soccer match and just file in from the pub, watch 45 minutes, take a bathroom break, maybe take a beer and go right back, and that's it. That's their soccer sports experience. And then you get the American experience where, number one, fans all mix. They're not sitting cordoned off. You can bring your kids, face paint, the whole thing. It's a carnival. And I think that is something that also has attracted a lot of overseas markets is, let's bring the show to town.
How big of a future does the NFL have in sports betting? I mean, we've seen it kind of become very, very in North American sports, which I don't know, 20 years ago, I don't know if anybody, some people expected it one day, others, were more skeptical. But going forward, how big of a piece of the pie is sports gambling for the NFL?
Right now, it's relatively small. The 2 sources of revenue primarily for the league is sponsorships, both on the league side, like Caesars and MGM, but also locally. Different clubs have their own deals. And then data, selling the actual sports data to the apps, often baked in with how fast the data is delivered. And that's pretty much it. They don't take a stake in the actual handle. That's not their business. The states collect the taxes, but it's gotten some traction, and I think the owners want to expand in whatever way they can. They're looking for every angle on it, but it's taking time. I mean, it's moving so fast. At the same time, there's only so many ways they can make money from it.
What else do we need to know, whether about the NFL, about the book? What should we be following going forward?
Well, I mean, look, it's a business book about sports, and so it's a serious look at how they've been making money, how they settled issues and controversies, including between the owners themselves. I mean, they're a pretty sometimes eclectic group. And they've had their run-ins, Jerry Jones most notably, with the league and the other owners. They're very competitive. But what's interesting is the owners are they might be aggressive in their own businesses, like Jerry Jones was in oil and gas, for instance. That's high risk, high return. When you get to the NFL and you know that you're getting a check every year from the television contracts, that makes it possible so you break even from the time you turn on the lights. You can do a lot with that, right? Once you're secure in knowing you're not going to lose money, you can experiment, you can take your time. So I think that is, to me, was interesting because at least the NFL as the biggest league, you would think they'd be really progressive. And in fact, they're not. They're more like a running game than a passing game. And I don't know, that came back to me over and over in these anecdotes as they move. They did take a handful of risks, but by and large, they move very slowly.
Ken Belson, thanks for being with us.
Sure, my pleasure.